Hi, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I actually broke my camera about like 10 minutes ago, so I'm filming this on my phone, so if the quality is bad, that's why. It'll be really embarrassing actually if the quality turned out to be better than my camera, because it's a piece of shit. Like this, bad. Anyway, do you like my 60s style that I've gone for? I've got the little poof and look, the cut crease. I have a cut crease. I think I kind of love it. Although the t-shirt doesn't really match the vibe. That's not related to this video at all. What I'm doing today is I'm gonna give you all a rundown of my favourite pieces of media that I've been enjoying so far in 2024. I also have a cold, but it's fine. I think I'm gonna start off with TV shows, then film, then music, and then finally books, because that's just kind of from least interesting to most interesting. Me and my flatmates tend to watch a lot of comedy shows in the living room, just in the background, so that's honestly the majority of the TV shows that I have been watching. For the majority of the time It's Always Sunny, and whenever we run out of things to watch we always just put it back on, so I've watched every single episode of Always Sunny I think at this point. I've also watched Schitt's Creek, which, like, I tried to watch Schitt's Creek a while back and I thought it was kind of mid. But then I watched it again from like season 3 onwards and I got obsessed. Like, ew, David. That has entered my daily vocabulary so hard. Ew, David. No, David. A while back we also watched What We Do in the Shadows, which, if you don't know, I don't think it's as popular as the other shows on this list. What We Do in the Shadows is basically about 3 vampires and their human familiar. It's a comedy show and honestly it is one of my favourite shows ever. I mean, the atmosphere for one, you know, the fashion, the humour. I mean, for genuinely about a month I could not stop doing the Nando accent. Like, Guillermo, what are you doing? I love it, I love it, I love it so much. It's like if you took a goth and made them a comedy show, you know? And also it's got vampires in it and it's really gay. Well, it's really bisexual, so. Recently, I've also been watching Law & Order SVU, mostly because none of the other Law & Orders are available on Netflix. Sometimes I have to take a break though, because it's like that's too much assault for me. But it is quite addicting to watch, just in terms of like action and the copious amounts of police brutality that are there for some reason, and painted in like a heroic fashion, which is just weird, but you know. Anyway, that's just a quick overview because that's the boring part. On to film. I've been making it my mission to watch more films recently because I feel like they can be a great source of inspiration and it's just a great medium to get into, because I don't really watch films ever. I'm like, oh, I never have time for that, but I do, I have time for it. I've actually only watched 4 this year. I've watched 4 films, that's like 1 a month. First off, I watched Black Swan. Finally, everyone's been raving about it online for about 2-3 years. I actually could not find a single thing to criticize about that film. It was really well done. I actually got quite uncomfortable at like multiple points. It was really good. I thought it was gonna be like kind of mid. I always saw it in like the same film groups as like a Girl Interrupted, for instance. And like I watched Girl Interrupted and it just wasn't, you know, it wasn't hitting for me. But Black Swan is great, right? At least I thought it was great. Then after that, I watched Eyes Wide Shut. I'd actually been meaning to watch it for ages, right? But I couldn't convince anyone to watch it with me, so I was like, oh, I'm gonna watch it myself. Because that's okay, you can watch things by yourself and it's fine. It's very much a product of the times. It's very Satanic Panic inspired, like 90s, right? It's visually stunning. And that film has single-handedly made me love coloured fairy lights again. Because I thought they were kind of tacky until that, but I think they kind of slay now. I think I just like weird, fucked up cults. Then last week I watched The Talented Mr. Ripley because I saw a video essay about Saltburn and how it just wasn't that good. Which is funny because I've never actually seen Saltburn. I didn't go watch it in the cinemas when it got released. And they made the case that it was pretty much just a worse version of The Talented Mr. Ripley. So I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. Let me go watch that. I loved it. I mean, I don't think I have ever, you know, come across anything that really just like, you know? It's like if you mixed Kill Your Darlings and The Secret History with, for instance, Call Me By Your Name's Italy aesthetic, you know? I love. Not long after that, I watched A Portrait of a Lady on Fire. If you don't know, that's the one about the two historical lesbians, and they're like, do all lovers feel like they're inventing something new? You know? That quote, that's from there. Honestly, I didn't really like it. I love me a good lesbian romance. I love the yearning, but it was just, I don't know, it had no flavour to me. I may be wrong. I may have just not picked up on it. That's my bad if that's the case. Not a huge fan though, personally. I don't actually know why I included that, considering the title of this video is media that I'm enjoying, but you know, it's fine, I'm allowed to dislike one thing. Those are all the films I watched, and I guess we're on to music now. So I pretty consistently listen to Lana Del Rey. I feel like you could probably tell that by looking at me with the like the whole 60s thing going on. But I love listening to her on like road trips, bus rides, blah blah blah. So that's like, you know, that goes without saying. However, quite funnily, I think I've actually like regressed into my emo phase, which yeah, I had one. I had an emo phase when I was like 12 or 13, and I was obsessed with Fall Out Boy and Panic at the Disco. And like looking back, Panic at the Disco was not that girl. But I have been listening to a lot, and I mean a lot, of Fall Out Boy recently, which is just kind of funny, you know? Sometimes you just have to go back to your childhood playlists and you'll find comfort and answers. Specifically, I've been listening to a lot of Folie à Deux, which in my opinion is their best album. It's like, it's just banger after banger after banger. Although Infinity on High is a close second. Big fan of Headfirst Slide into Cooperstown and A Bad Bet, and also West Coast Smoker. Those are my two favourites, I think. 27 is quite good actually. Oh, I don't know, they're all so good. In the beginning of this year I also listened to a lot of Jeff Buckley, specifically this album of his. I've had people show me Jeff Buckley before and they were like, oh my god, he's a musical genius. And I was just like, But then like I listened to it actually and I'm like, wait a minute, they have a point. You know, why was I not like computing that at the time? In addition, I've also been listening to a lot of Everyone Else Is Doing It, So Why Can't We, or Why Don't We? That album by the Cranberries. I love the Cranberries a lot. I do need to branch out and explore some of their other albums. Call me a fake fan if you will, but that album itself made me like this with the Cranberries. I just love the way she sings, you know? A couple of weeks ago, maybe last week, Hosier released his new EP, which featured Too Sweet, which has gone kind of viral on TikTok. I actually made a TikTok with it, but apparently it's like his next fastest growing song after Take Me to Church, which I think is funny because a lot of people online were like, you guys are not listening to the lyrics correctly. It's actually a rejection song. Like, yeah, Too Sweet is a banger, but it's not like his most lyrically complex work. Like, Hosier has got better songs than that. Although it is incredibly catchy and I do love it. I'm just saying, it's not like James Joyce or anything. You guys don't need to be acting like that. Specifically from that EP, obviously I like Too Sweet, I just said. But I also really like Wildflower and Barley. I think especially for springtime, it's really pretty. And it's just a great spring song, really. Last but not least, for the music section, I've also been listening to a lot of jazz, specifically jazz noir, but I can also go for a little bit of French jazz. I just quite like jazz, to be honest. I don't know how else to explain it. I put it on while cooking dinner, while studying. It just makes everything feel more profound in my life, if that makes sense. Like, I don't think there's any better music to help you romanticize your life. Finally, we can get on to my favourite section, the books I've read. And I'm quite proud of myself because I've read 8 books. I am going to be including a bit more in the list of what I'm currently reading, just so I can give my opinion on it. I think 8 is like more than I read last year, because I just kind of like, I fell off. I had a huge reading slump last year, so I feel very accomplished with this. I'm gonna start off chronologically. First I read I Am a Cat by Natsume Soseki. That's a satire about 1920s Japanese society and specifically like the middle class. It's from the point of view of a really, really stuck-up cat, which I think is just funny.
Think you the shit, bitch? You not even the fault.
I think Ice Spice read I Am a Cat when she wrote that. Crikey on a bike. I keep having to readjust my camera. Anyway, I also read The Scarlet Gang of Asakusa because I had made an effort to delve more into Japanese classic literature. It also came up in one of my lectures, so I was like, this is the perfect time to go read that. It was a really interesting read. I thought it was going to be a lot more dark than it was. Not that that's a bad thing that it wasn't like super weird and dark, but I would say it's a very experimental novel. It's non-linear, like as in non-chronological. And also it like switches point of views between characters who have seemingly no connection to each other. The like main story at one point is just completely abandoned until the very end. It's quite interesting. I didn't really find it very entertaining, but I also read it mostly to kind of gain insight as to how Tokyo functioned in like 1920s Japan and kind of the places people hang out and the things they do, just the city in general during that time period. After that I wanted something kind of fun because I actually found The Scarlet Gang of Asakusa quite boring and hard to kind of comprehend. So I read A Certain Hunger. You guys probably don't know this, but I love a good like schmanibalism tale. Don't know if I'm allowed to say that on here, but just the way she describes food is so, I don't know, descriptive. It's like the way that Patrick Susskind's perfume describes scent, really. I really enjoyed it. I don't think it's, you know, some form of literary masterpiece, but it's incredibly entertaining. It's fun, it's witty, and it's just a good time overall, really. After that, I actually read a non-fiction text. I read Becoming Modern Women by Michiko Suzuki, I think it was. It's basically an academic text about gender in the pre-war and interwar periods. It kind of focuses on 1910s, 20s and 30s, and the book is split into 3 sections. It deals with same-sex love, love in marriage, and maternal love. And it's basically how you can approach the female gender in those time periods through love, basically. It's actually incredibly interesting. I found it very insightful, and it was just like fun. I mean, I don't usually say that about academic texts, but I liked reading it. I liked learning about things like that. After that, I read Confessions of a Mask by Yukio Mishima. I actually mentioned this in my like spring TBR list, and I finished it and it was great. I'm not gonna really delve into that because if you want you can watch that video. I don't want to sound redundant, so I'm just gonna go on to the next one, which was On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, which made me cry, honestly. It hit hard, and I think it's genuinely a masterpiece of writing. I mean, Ocean Vuong really knows how to tug at your heartstrings. I can't really think of any criticisms for the book, actually. I loved it. It was written really well. Then I wanted to kind of return to Mishima afterwards. I read The Sailor Who Fell from Grace with the Sea, which, by the way, I did not know that that book was going to be as fucked up as it was. Because, like, it's 130 pages. I was like, how bad can it be? There's probably worse things out there, but like, you know? So basically, it's about a gang of teenage boys who are really like cynical and kind of psychopathic. One of them, he's not the leader, but one of them starts like spying on his mom, who's having relations with a sailor, and he by the way, this son like loves the sea, right? And he's spying on them every night, and he's completely like idolizing this sailor, but the sailor turns out to be like a complete softie for his mom. They get together, they want to get married, and so these boys hatch a plan to kill him viciously. I would maybe look up trigger warnings. Actually, I would probably look up trigger warnings for almost all of these books, because when I read it, I was just like completely blindsided by this one section where they torture a cat. And animal torture in fiction makes me cry a lot. Like, that's one thing I can't really handle. It makes me feel really ill. So I actually had to completely skip past that. So I don't know what happened there. It's fine, probably. But it was quite gross from what I did see. What I'm currently reading is The Great Gatsby. You know, American classic. I'm not American, so I never read it in school. So I'm taking it upon myself to read it, and I thought it was kind of like, writing. The writing it's really evocative. I mean, I don't know. I keep like underlining everything pretty much. It's really pretty. It's really gorgeous writing. I'm only about like 60 pages into it, so I can't really comment on the plot too much, but I do think it's gonna become like one of my top books. I really like it so far. Next is Orientalism, which I didn't manage to finish because I accidentally left the book at my mum's with about 70 pages to go. But I think I've read enough to like give my summary on it. I think it's a very important text, and it clearly outlines like the development of Orientalism and how it justifies a bunch of political and economic decisions. I did find it very hard to keep going past like the 2/3 mark. Not because it's like particularly heavy or anything, it's just after a while I was like, okay, I understand the concept now. Because I don't do history, right? At least not Western history, no, mostly detailed Western history. I read it because Orientalism is quite an important text when considering the fact that I do like Japanese studies, you know, that stemmed out of Orientalist studies. But it was just kind of going on about the development of Orientalism from like the late 19th century to the 20th century. Honestly, I don't really need to know that. That doesn't apply to my course like at all. So I don't know if I'm actually going to be finishing it. Maybe I will. It's like 70 pages. So I don't know if I'm going to be finishing that, but I've learned all that I pretty much needed to learn from it, and what I wanted to learn from it, and how it functions, etc, etc. Lastly, my third non-fiction book, which I actually just started yesterday, is Applied Magic by Dion Fortune. It's basically a collection of essays about occultism. She's a really well-renowned occult author, and within like a page I knew that I was gonna love it. It goes into like the theory of everything, not the film, not the Stephen Hawking film, but like, you know, okay. I'm very interested in the occult. I think it's mesmerizing to learn about. It's one of my favorite research topics actually. So I have a collection of occult books, but most of them are really surface level, and this one is like proper occult book. It just talks about like the psychology and the theoretical aspect of occultism, which I think is really interesting. And I have to like actively restrain myself from highlighting everything or underlining everything because highlighters are ugly. So I'm really looking forward to finishing that. I think that's going to be very interesting, and I'm probably gonna love it a lot. It's only 80 pages as well, like that's pretty good. Anyway, thank you for watching. That's all I have for you today. I wish I had consumed more films to be able to tell you guys about, but I would highly recommend that you take my suggestions because I have pretty good taste, if I say so myself. If you enjoy my videos, you would probably enjoy the types of media that I've been watching as well. Well, watching or reading or listening. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, I would highly suggest that you subscribe to me. I could really use it. Also, please leave a like because I deserve it. I mean, if you don't want to, that's fine. What am I gonna do? You know, I'm not gonna hunt you down. Bye bye.